From being decapitated for treason, to dying alone in exile, to even rotting to death on the throne. This is how every French monarch died over the last 1100 years. Now, before anyone comments, what about the Merovingians? We're starting with the first French king anointed by the Pope. You're welcome. Carolingian dynasty. Pepin the Short. Pepin overthrew the last Merovingian and became the first French king blessed by the Pope. He spent his reign taking Aquitaine and kicking Muslims out of southern France. Died in 768 on campaign at age 54. Nobody recorded the cause. His kingdom passed to his two sons. One of them would become the most famous monarch in medieval history. Charlemagne, from 768 to 814. The most famous medieval king, built an empire covering most of Western Europe. Conquered the Saxons, the Lombards, and everyone else who looked at him wrong. Crowned emperor by the Pope on Christmas Day 800. Died in January 814 after a week-long fever. He was 65. His body was seated upright on a throne inside his tomb at Aachen. Father of Europe. Corpse on a chair. Louis the Pious, from 814 to 840. Charlemagne's only surviving son. Got everything. Then spent his reign watching it fall apart. His own sons rebelled against him 3 times. In 833, his army abandoned him on a field now called the Field of Lies. He was forced to beg forgiveness in public twice. Died in 840 on an island in the Rhine, forgiving his children with his final breath. His empire split into 3 within 3 years. France, Germany, and a strip in the middle nobody remembers. Charles the Bald, from 840 to 877. Charles got the western chunk that became France. Spent his reign fighting Vikings, fighting brothers, fighting everyone. In 877, he fell ill crossing the Alps on the way back from Italy. Died in a peasant's hut. His body rotted so fast the funeral party couldn't take the smell. They dumped him at the nearest abbey and ran. Louis the Stammerer, from 877 to 879. Charles the Bald's son was sick his entire life. Struggled to walk, struggled to talk, struggled to control nobles who smelled weakness. His final act was marching against the Vikings. He fell ill on campaign and died at Compiègne in 879 at age 32. Probably the same illness that haunted him since birth. He ruled for just 2 years, leaving behind 2 sons and a pregnant wife. Louis III, from 879 to 882. Louis and his brother Carloman II ruled together after their father died. Louis actually did well, won battles against the Vikings, protected the kingdom, then died at 17 chasing a girl on horseback. He rode after her into her father's house and smashed his head on a door lintel. Died from injury, meaning horniness killed this king. Carloman II, from 879 to 884. Ruled alone after his brother's embarrassing death. Did fine for 5 years and even won some battles, until he went hunting. A wild boar charged. His servant Bertoldus panicked and stabbed Carloman in the leg, trying to kill the animal. The blade went deep. The wound festered. 7 days of agony, then sepsis killed him at age 18. Friendly fire. Charles the Fat, from 884 to 888. Briefly reunited Charlemagne's empire. All of it. East Francia, West Francia, Italy, the whole thing under one crown again. Then lost everything. Vikings kept raiding. Charles paid them off instead of fighting. His nobles got sick of watching him hand over gold to raiders. They threw him out in 887. He died 3 months later from illness, probably epilepsy. Shamed, alone, the empire died with him, forever. Odo, from 888 to 898. Not a Carolingian, just a warlord who defended Paris against the Vikings and got elected king for it. The nobles needed someone who could actually fight. Odo spent 10 years battling Vikings and rebellious nobles. He fell sick during a campaign. Fever took him fast. He died at La Fête on 1st January 898. Nobody recorded the exact cause. Charles the Simple, from 898 to 929. Called simple, meaning straightforward, not stupid. Though maybe stupid fits, he gave Normandy to the Vikings hoping they'd stop raiding. It worked. Then his own nobles turned on him. Captured in 923, thrown in prison at Péronne, stayed there for 6 years and died in 929. Murdered or starved, but either way, dead in a cell. Robert I, from 922 to 923. Robert seized the crown from Charles the Simple while Charles was still alive. Big mistake. 1 year later, Charles' supporters raised an army. The two sides met at Soissons in 923. Robert led his troops from the front. A sword cut him down in the fighting. He died on the battlefield, meaning he was king for just 1 year. Rudolph, from 923 to 936. Robert's son-in-law took the crown after Soissons, spent 13 years fighting Vikings, rebels, and everyone who thought they deserved the throne more. Never got a break. In 936, illness finally caught up with him and he died at his palace in Auxerre. No drama, no murder, just a tired king who ran out of time. Louis IV, Altamare, from 936 to 954. Called from overseas because he grew up in exile in England. Came back to claim the throne as a teenager and spent 18 years fighting to keep it. In 954, he fell off his horse chasing a wolf near Reims, survived the fall, died months later from the injuries, and the wolf got away. Lothair, from 954 to 986. Longest reigning Carolingian in France, 32 years on the throne. Spent most of it fighting the Holy Roman Empire over land, but in 986, he died suddenly. Some said illness, others blamed his wife Emma because she wanted their son on the throne faster. Poison was never proven, but Emma had motive. Medieval family values. Louis V, from 986 to 987. The last Carolingian king, called the Do-Nothing because the nobles ran everything while he sat on the throne. Ruled for 1 year when hunting in the forest of Latte near Senlis. Fell from his horse and died on 22 May 978 at age 20. No children, no heir. 2 centuries of Carolingian rule ended with a fall in the woods. The Carolingians were done. No heirs, no options. So the nobles picked a new family and the Capetians would hold France for over 300 years. Capetian dynasty. Hugh Capet, from 987 to 996. Spent his reign fighting to prove he deserved the crown. Nobles mocked him, once asked, "Who made you king?" Died in Paris on 24th October 996. Nothing dramatic, just old age. But his family held the throne for 800 years. Guess he had the last laugh. Robert II, the Pious, from 996 to 1031. Called the Pious because he spent more time praying than ruling. Married 3 times, got excommunicated for marrying his cousin, burned heretics alive, his own sons rebelled against him. His wife Constance made his life miserable until fever took him at Milan in 1031. 35 years on the throne, mostly spent begging God for forgiveness. Henry I, from 1031 to 1060. His mother wanted his brother on the throne instead. Henry won, but had to give Burgundy away to keep the peace. Spent his reign fighting everyone. His brother, the Normans, his own vassals. Lost twice to William the Conqueror. Died on August 1060 at Vitry-à-Loge while besieging a Norman fortress. Never even took it. Philip I, from 1060 to 1108. Called the Armorous because he couldn't keep it in his pants. Dumped his wife for another man's wife. Got excommunicated. Kept the mistress anyway. Got excommunicated again. Spent the last years of his reign fat, lazy, and obsessed with Bertrand. Died at Melun in 1108 and asked not to be buried with his ancestors as he knew he didn't deserve it. Louis VI, from 1108 to 1137. Called the Fat because he was. Spent his reign hunting robber barons castle by castle. Good at war until his weight made fighting impossible. Crowned his son co-king in 1129. Then married him to Eleanor of Aquitaine, adding a massive duchy to the crown. Died of dysentery 7 days later and never saw what that marriage would cost France. Louis VII, from 1137 to 1180. His father married him to Eleanor of Aquitaine, which was the worst decision in French history. They crusaded together and the marriage collapsed. She divorced him, married Henry II of England, and took Aquitaine with her. Louis spent 20 years watching the Angevins grow powerful while paralysis slowly took his body. Died in Paris in 1180, leaving France weaker than he found it. Philip II Augustus, from 1180 to 1223. Spent 40 years undoing his father's mistakes. Crushed the Angevins at Bouvines in 1214. Seized Normandy, tripled the royal domain, and was the first king to call himself King of France instead of King of the Franks. Built the Louvre and even paved Paris, but fell ill in 1222. Ignored his doctors and died on the road the following summer, leaving France the most powerful kingdom in Europe. Louis VIII, from 1223 to 1226. Called the Lion, he almost became King of England as he invaded in 1216, took London but got excommunicated and lost anyway. As French king, spent 3 years crushing what remained of the English territory, led the Albigensian crusade south and besieged Avignon for months, won, but his army was wrecked, died of dysentery on the road home in 1226, ruled just 3 years. His wife Blanche finished the job. Louis IX, from 1226 to 1270, the only French king made a saint, ruled 44 years, reformed the legal system, abolished trial by combat, built the Sainte-Chapelle to house Christ's crown of thorns, led 2 crusades. The first one got him captured in Egypt. The second one killed him as dysentery took him outside Tianus in 1270. They boiled his body to send his bones home. Philip III, from 1270 to 1285, called the Bold, though nobody remembers why, became king in Tianus when his father died on crusade. The trip home killed his wife, his brother, his sister, and his brother-in-law. Spent his reign expanding the kingdom. Then launched a disastrous crusade against Aragon. Army got wrecked by dysentery. So did he. Died in Perpignan, 1285. They boiled this one too. Philip IV, from 1285 to 1314, called the Fair for his looks, the Iron King for everything else. Destroyed the Knights Templar to cancel his debts. Had the Grand Master burned alive. The old man cursed him from the flames, summoning him to face God within the year. 8 months later, Philip died in a haunting accident. Coincidence? Probably. Louis X, from 1314 to 1316, the quarrelsome. His wife was caught cheating and thrown in prison, where she conveniently died. He remarried 5 days later, ruled for 18 months, played an exhausting game of tennis, drank too much cold wine, and dropped dead at 26. Some suspected poison. His pregnant widow gave birth to a son who lived 5 days. John I, 1316. He was born king and died 4 days later. Nobody knows why. Rumors blamed poison, maybe a pin through the skull by his aunt. His death ended 3 centuries of father-to-son succession. Decades later, a man named Giano Baglioni claimed he was John, swapped at birth and raised in Italy. Nobody believed him. He died in prison. Philip V, from 1316 to 1322. His infant nephew died after 4 days. Philip grabbed the crown and convinced everyone that women couldn't inherit the throne. Set a precedent that would later start the 100 Years' War. Reformed the currency, fixed relations with Flanders, tried to launch a crusade, then dysentery killed him at 30. No sons. His own rule proved women couldn't save dysenteries either. Charles IV, from 1322 to 1328. Last of the direct Capetians, third son of Philip the Fair to wear the crown, third to die without a male heir. His wife was pregnant when he died. France waited 2 months. She gave birth to a daughter. 3 centuries of direct father-to-son succession ended with a girl nobody would let rule. The direct Capetian line was dead. A cousin took the throne, but not everyone agreed he should have it. Valois dynasty, Philip VI, from 1328 to 1350. First Valois king. Edward III of England thought the crown should be his. Philip disagreed. The 100 Years' War began. France was richer, stronger, more confident. None of it mattered. The English destroyed Philip's army at Crécy in 1346. The Black Death followed and killed a third of France, including his wife. Philip died in 1350 as his kingdom shattered. John II, from 1350 to 1364. The Good, though no one remembers why. Tried to reform the army. It didn't work. The English crushed him at Poitiers in 1356 and took him prisoner. France paid a fortune to get him back. When his son broke parole and escaped English custody, John returned to London voluntarily to preserve his honor. Died there a few months later, prisoner king to the end. Charles V, from 1364 to 1380. The Wise. Inherited a kingdom half conquered by England. Refused to fight pitched battles. Let his general Bertrand du Guesclin grind the English down with raids and sieges instead. It worked. By his death, France had reclaimed almost everything lost at Brittany. For 25 years, a wound on his arm wept pus. Doctors said if it ever stopped, he had 15 days to live. It stopped, and they were right. Charles VI, from 1380 to 1422. At 24, he went insane in a force and killed his own knights. For the rest of his life, he drifted in and out of madness. Sometimes he forgot he was king. Sometimes he thought he was made of glass. While he raved, England invaded and Burgundy rebelled. Signed away France to Henry V, the madness finally took him in 1422. They called him the Mad. He earned it. Charles VII, from 1422 to 1461, inherited a kingdom occupied by England and signed away by his mad father. They called him King of Bourges because that was all he had left. Then Joan of Arc arrived and got him crowned at Reims. He won the 100 Years' War, died in 1461 after an abscess in his mouth made it impossible to swallow, starved to death. Louis XI, from 1461 to 1483. They called him the Universal Spider for his webs of plots and schemes, hated his father and rebelled against him, fled to Burgundy, came back to claim the throne and spent 20 years destroying the great dukes who threatened royal power. When his enemy Charles the Bold died at Nancy in 1477, Burgundy fell and France unified at last. Louis died in 1483 after years of strokes. Few mourned him. Charles VIII, from 1483 to 1498, invaded Italy with revolutionary artillery and took Naples without a real fight. Then a coalition formed against him and he had to fight his way back home. All his gains lost within months. 3 years later, he hit his head on a door lintel at Amboise, fell into a coma, and died 9 hours later. He was 27. All his children had died before him. Louis XII, from 1498 to 1515, father of the people, for lowering taxes and reforming the courts, spent most of his reign fighting over Italy, won Milan, lost Naples, got driven out by the Swiss, married 3 times trying to produce an heir. The third wife was a teenage English princess. He was 52. Dead within 3 months, they said the bedchamber killed him. Francis I, from 1515 to 1547, the Renaissance king, brought Leonardo da Vinci to France, built Chambord, made French the official language, spent most of his reign fighting the Habsburg over Italy, got captured at the Battle of Pavia and held prisoner in Madrid, traded his own sons as hostages to get free. Died in 1547 at Rambouillet, complaining about the weight of the crown. Henry II, from 1547 to 1559, spent 4 years as a child hostage in Spain because his father got captured at Pavia, came home, fell for a woman 20 years older and never got over her. Ended the Italian wars with the Peace of Lecato Cambrésis, celebrated with a jousting tournament. A lance splinter went through his eye and into his brain, dead 10 days later. Francis II, from 1559 to 1560. Married Mary, Queen of Scots. They'd been childhood sweethearts since she arrived at French court at age 5. Became king at 15. The crown was so heavy at his coronation that nobles had to hold it up for him. 17 months later, an ear infection spread to his brain. Dead at 16. Charles IX, from 1560 to 1574. Became king at age 10. His mother Catherine de' Medici ran things. In 1572, he approved the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. 10,000 Protestants died. The screaming haunted him afterward. He told his nurse he was lost, that God would never forgive him. Tuberculosis took hold. By spring 1574, he was coughing blood, dead at 23. Henry III, from 1574 to 1589. Elected King of Poland at 22. Fled back to France the moment his brother died. Spent 15 years trying to hold the kingdom together while Catholics and Protestants tore it apart. Had the Duke of Guise murdered at Blois. A year later, a fanatical monk stabbed him in the gut. Last of the Valois. The Valois line died with a knife wound. A Protestant from Navarre inherited a Catholic kingdom at war with itself. Bourbon Dynasty. Henry IV, from 1589 to 1610. Henry III died childless, so the crown passed to a distant cousin. The first Bourbon king survived the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre by converting to Catholicism. Escaped, converted back, then converted Catholic again to claim the throne. Paris is worth a mass, he said. Ended the wars of religion with the Edict of Nantes. Survived 22 assassination attempts. The 23rd got him. Stabbed in his carriage by a Catholic fanatic. Louis XIII, from 1610 to 1643. Became king at 8 when his father was stabbed. His mother ran the regency badly. At 16, he seized power and had her favorite killed. let Cardinal Richelieu run things for the next 18 years. The Huguenots fought the Habsburgs, married for 23 years before pronouncing an heir, died of tuberculosis at 41. Louis XIV, from 1643 to 1715, the Sun King, took the throne at 4, ruled for 72 years, built Versailles, revoked the Edict of Nantes and drove out the Protestant, fought wars constantly, outlived his son, his grandson, and 2 great-grandsons. By the end, France was broke and exhausted. Died of gangrene at 76. His heir was 5 years old. Louis XV, from 1715 to 1774, became king at 5, the second longest reign in French history after his great-grandfather. Lost most of France's empire in the 7 Years' War. Canada, India, nearly everything. Mistresses ran the court. The treasury bled dry. By the end, they called him Louis the Well-Beloved with a sneer. Died of smallpox at Versailles. The rot had set in. Louis XVI, from 1774 to 1792, inherited a bankrupt kingdom and people hungry for change. Tried reforms, the nobles blocked them. Supported the American Revolution, which emptied what was left of the treasury. When bread pieces exploded, so did Paris. The French Revolution began. The Bastille fell. The royal family was dragged from Versailles. He tried to flee and was caught at Varennes. The National Convention put him on trial for treason. Guilty. On 21st of January 1793, the guillotine dropped. 1,000 years of monarchy ended with one blade. Louis XVII, from 1793 to 1795, never ruled. He was 8 when his father was guillotined. The revolutionaries locked him in the Temple prison. They made him denounce his own mother. Then they sealed him in a dark cell. No education, no hygiene, no human contact. Vermin, filth, sores. He stopped speaking, stopped walking. Died at 10 of tuberculosis, alone in his own waste. A guard called him a corpse who breathed. And whilst the revolution killed the king, a general from Corsica crowned himself emperor. House of Bonaparte, Napoleon I, from 1804 to 1814 and 1815. A Corsican artillery officer who seized power in a coup and crowned himself emperor. Conquered most of Europe. Defeated 5 coalitions, then invaded Russia in 1812 with 600,000 men. Fewer than 100,000 came back. Europe united against him. Paris fell. He abdicated and was exiled to Elba. Escaped. Ruled for 100 days and then lost at Waterloo. The British shipped him to St. Helena, a rock in the South Atlantic. Died there of stomach cancer at 51. As Napoleon fell, the Allies brought back the Bourbons. Louis XVIII, from 1814 to 1824, fled France in 1791 and spent 23 years in exile. Prussia, Russia, England waited while the revolution killed his brother and nephew, while Napoleon conquered Europe. When the empire finally collapsed in 1814, the Allies put him on the throne. Napoleon escaped Elba and Louis fled again. Waterloo brought him back for good. Ruled as a constitutional monarch. Granted a charter. Died of gangrene at 68, the last French king to die on the throne. Charles X, from 1824 to 1830, the youngest brother, fled France for 3 days after Bastille fell and spent 25 years in exile. Came back when Napoleon collapsed, got the throne at 66 and tried to turn back the clock. Censored the press, gave the church more power, paid nobles for lands taken during the revolution. Paris rioted in July 1830. 3 days of street fighting. He gave up the crown and ran to Britain, then Austria. Died of cholera in Slovenia at 79, becoming the only French king buried outside France. The senior Bourbon line fell. A cousin from the junior branch took the crown. Louis Philippe I, from 1830 to 1848, the citizen king. His father had voted for Louis XVI's execution. Louis Philippe fought in the Revolutionary Army, then fled into exile for 21 years. When Paris rose against Charles X, they put him on the throne. Wore a business suit, carried an umbrella, ruled for 18 years until another revolution chased him out. Fled to England disguised as Mr. Smith, died there 2 years later at 76. And as the Orleans fell, a Bonaparte took France again. House of Bonaparte restored, Napoleon III, from 1852 to 1870. The nephew tried to seize power twice and failed. got locked up for 6 years, escaped dressed as a laborer, won the presidency in 1848, then made himself emperor, built modern Paris, then picked a fight with Prussia. The Prussian army crushed his forces at Sedan and took him prisoner, where he was dethroned and exiled to England. Died there of kidney stones at 64. Meaning 1100 years of French monarchy ended with a simple kidney stone in England. But if you want to see how every British monarchs died, check the video on screen now.